Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar Noelle LaCroix, and okay, so academic achievement gets me a little excited.
Well, I like that about you. And I'm story expert and exemption for impending death situation, Lani Diane Rich, and we are here today to talk about Lover's Walk, the 8th episode of Season 3.
Lover's Walk aired on November 24th, 1998, and was directed by David Semmel and written by Dan Vebber. Dan Vebber wrote just one other episode of Buffy, this season's 13th episode, The Zeppo.
All right, Still Pretty is fully spoiled. We are going to talk about this episode, and we're going to talk about any contextual whatnot we might want to get into as we talk about the entire series as a whole. So if you have not watched all of Buffy, go do that now. It's very important that you have that entire thing under your belt. Then come back and listen to all of our episodes because they're really lots of fun. All right, we gave her everything. Beautiful jewels, beautiful dresses with beautiful girls in them, but nothing made her happy. So let's go on patrol. In Lover's Walk, Spike's back, Spike's back, Spike's back! Okay, I got that out of the way. Let me back up. In Lover's Walk, the SAT scores have come in, and while Willow is disappointed with hers not being perfect, everyone else, except Xander, seems to have a bright future ahead of them. Later that night, a black DeSoto crashes over the Welcome to Sunnydale sign, and guess who's back, falling down drunk and ready to cause trouble? It's Spike! Spike's back!
Sweet home.
Drunk and weepy after being dumped by Drew, Spike returns to the burned-out factory and works through his grief by smashing Drew's charred dolls, as you do. Meanwhile, Buffy's great SAT scores are giving Joyce ideas about Buffy's future, and as Giles packs up to go on a retreat in the woods, he agrees that college is a real option for Buffy, especially now that there's a second Slayer around. Willow and Xander plan a double bowling date with Oz and Cordelia, which seems like a good idea at the time, but as their attraction to each other increases, so does the guilt.
I wish I wasn't so attracted to you. I wish we could make it all stop.
Any suggestions?
Spike goes on a mournful bender, spying on Angel in the mansion and ranting before passing out in the courtyard. He wakes up to the sun lighting his hand on fire and decides it's all too much. Up to the magic shop he goes, looking for a curse to give Angel boils, but when Willow walks in with a list of ingredients for an anti-love spell, he gets a new idea. Buffy goes to visit Angel, looking for him to tell her that she should stay in Sunnydale, but instead, he tells her to go to college. Willow calls Xander into the chemistry lab where she's doing her anti-love spell, and while they're fighting about it, Spike shows up.
I'm gonna get the lights. Clean this place up before they get here and start asking questions.
Xander!
I need to borrow the little girl. You don't mind, do you?
Spike knocks Xander out and takes both of them to the factory basement, where he tells Willow that she's going to do a love spell for him to get Drusilla back, or she and Xander will both die. She sends him out to get her supplies. At the school, Cordelia and Oz discover that Xander and Willow are gone, and they get Buffy. She sends them to go get Giles, and then picks up the phone when Joyce calls the library looking for her. She hears Spike's voice in the background and rushes out. Angel gets there first, but he's been disinvited. Spike taunts him as Joyce freaks out, but Buffy arrives, invites Angel in, and is just about to stake Spike when he tells her he's got Willow and Xander.
Where are they?
Doesn't work like that, Peaches. When did you become all soul-having again? I thought you outgrew that. Your friend's gonna work a little magic for me. And she does my spell, I'll let them both go.
You're not famous for keeping your promises, Spike.
Well, you and your great poof here want to tag along, that's fine. But you get in my way, and you kill your friends.
As Oz and Cordelia are driving out of town, Oz smells Willow and follows that trail. Spike takes Buffy and Angel to the magic shop to get supplies and lectures them on the difference between love and friendship. At the factory, Xander wakes up and Willow brings him up to speed on the situation.
I'm not supposed to.
Exemption for impending death situation.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, Oz.
We have to get out of here.
After she and Oz catch Xander and Willow kissing, Cordelia rushes out of the factory, but the stairs give way beneath her and she falls, getting impaled by rebar. Outside the magic shop, Buffy, Angel, and Spike run into the mayor's goons sent to take out Spike. They fight, and Spike gets a little perspective.
Oh, God. It's been so long since I had a decent spot of violence. Really puts things in perspective.
Can we just do the damn spell now?
Oh, solve the spell. Your friends are at the factory. I'm really glad I came here, you know? I've been all wrong-headed about this. Weeping, crawling, blaming everybody else. I want Drew back. I just got to be the man I was. The man she loved. I'm going to do what I should have done in the first place. I'll find her, wherever she is, tie her up, torture her, till she likes me again.
Willow gains some perspective too and realizes that the person she really wants is Oz, but he won't speak to her now. At the hospital, Xander brings Cordelia flowers, but she won't talk to him either.
Look, Cordy, I want you to know that
Xander?
Yeah.
Stay away from me.
Buffy goes to see Angel and tells him that she can't see him anymore. He has trouble accepting it, so she gives him an impossible option.
There's got to be some way we can still see each other.
There is. Tell me that you don't love me.
All right, Noelle, Lover's Walk. Oh my God, it's so good. And this is one of my favorite episodes ever. This is going to be so fun.
It's so good. It's so good. Starting with the writing. Hello.
I know.
I don't usually notice the writing per se. And I realize that everything we see and hear on screen that's not improvisation or accident is the writing. But I'm talking specifically about the dance of dialogues and plot lines and scenes. Some of them are a little bit clunky, but in a way that works. You know, Buffy says nothing's going to happen, and then Willow says something's going to happen. But Spike crashing into the Welcome to Sunnydale sign and then just drunkenly toppling out of the car and reprising his home sweet home line. That's the kind of writing finesse that I love. And it just keeps going. You know, tell me that you don't love me, Buffy says to Angel at the end. And that was the line in I Only Have Eyes for You when they're working out they're working out their issues via ghosts, as you do in relationships.
Sure.
I'm not a fan of the Cordelia death fake out, but everything else is just so delightful. Especially everybody at the end with their melancholy 7 beat. You know, we get Angel, Willow, Oz, Xander, Cordelia, and Buffy all just forlorn after everything that's gone down. And then Spike's triumphant exit rocking out to My Way as he speeds down the road, gonna go seduce Drusilla by torturing her is like, oh, it's the chef kiss moment on the episode.
It really is.
So good.
It's so good. And Dan Weber, as you mentioned in the opening, right, is just like a freelancer.
Yeah.
He writes one more episode this season and then never does anything else. But the thing is, like, his understanding of these characters, which can sometimes be a little thin, especially with I guess by this time we're in the 3rd season, so there's enough material to get to really know the characters and know the situation. But, you know, with a freelancer, they often don't don't have the inside jokes. They don't have all of the context that the writers who've been on the show for such a long time, who are staff writers there every week, would necessarily have. So to take an episode like this, which is so important, I mean, this is the return of Spike. That's a big damn deal. And a lot of things happen, in this episode. We have, Buffy admitting that she's in love with Angel, Angel admitting that he's in love with Buffy. They can't see each other anymore. Willow and Xander get found out. Cordelia gets, stabbed with rebar. All of this stuff, it's so important to the overall season. There's really good stuff, really important stuff happening here. And to pass that on to a freelancer, like a really important episode, is usually, not the way it goes. They usually get like the one-offs, like the Zeppo. Zeppo, you can see passing that to a freelancer. But Dan Weber does such an amazing job with this episode. It's so good. And I'm like, what? You didn't have a spot on the team for this guy? Like, he's good.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, that always kind of surprised me. But it's such a fantastic episode. And it comes right down to like the title. The title is something that you can look past really quickly. You look at Lover's Walk and you think that it's a possessive, that this is the walk of lovers, but what it is, it's not possessive. It's lovers, plural, walk. It's what lovers do. They walk, right? Yeah. And when you look at it that way, it adds this extra like punch in the gut of melancholy to this episode, which is all about like the essential fragility of these love relationships, and that they just fall apart. And I think that it's so incredibly good, and at the end of the episode, all of our lovers have walked, like you just pointed out, right? Except Spike, who has got this renewed mission to go back and win Drew back through violence and mistreatment, which, granted, fair enough, she's probably gonna like.
Yeah. I mean, it's Drusilla.
Exactly.
But yeah, he literally has drive at the end. Like
Yes.
It's so great. It's so good.
Well, right. And I mean, of course, out of all of these relationships, Spike and Drusilla is probably the one that you could point to and say is the most destructive. But I think it's really interesting, though, Spike and his ability to love. Yeah. Love is one of Spike's, I think, like, main characteristics, his ability to love and to exist in the world with passion. And with energy, like it's just like essentially who he is. This is the only episode in season 3 with Spike. We have a drought. We have a Spike drought until season 4 when we start Spike's second act, right? In this whole thing. He comes back. He has this transformative experience of the chip, which of course takes away the thing in life that he loves the most, which is violence, right? He can't hurt people. And that leads him through one of the best and most interesting character arcs in all of Buffy. Watching Spike is fascinating, and asking questions about Spike is always kind of fun. Going back to this idea of vampire love, right?
Right.
That vampires can love. Drusilla says, we love not wisely, but, quite well, or something like that. She talks about that. And in season 2, when the judge came in, I smell humanity on these two. They have love and affection, and all that, right? Which is real. So it's kind of interesting because it sets up these like essential questions about love, that love exists truly independent of whether or not it is actually healthy or good for us. Love, we have this idea, everything is love, all goodness is love, everything good in the world stems from love. But, is it really true, or is it the fact that we define love so broadly? Like we have one basic word for it, is vampire love, is love without a soul not love? Is it obsession?
Yeah. It raises, there are so many questions that this episode raises for me, just about things like the definition of love in its various forms and friendship. I'm fascinated that Spike he pits love against friendship as though we don't love friends. And like, I get it. And we'll get into this when we get into all of our lovers,
Yes.
of the title. But I just like, we learn so much about who Spike is as a character through the way he experiences and defines love. I mean, I love the way he taught when he's talking to Joyce, and he says, you know, she's trying to bond with him about, you know, her experience with Buffy's father. And he says, no, our love was eternal, literally. He's just, it's clearly like vampire love is like its own thing, or at least it is to Spike.
Different. I mean, is it different? And that's, I think, an essential question. And it's weird that in our language, we don't have enough words for these different kinds of love. Eric Fromm said, immature love says, I love you because I need you. Mature love says, I need you because I love you. Right? So his love for Drew would, I mean, by that definition, you know, there are a million definitions out there. I'm just pulling, you know, one prism through which to look at this. But his love for Drew would seem to be immature love. It's about his needs. You know, when he says to Willow, make her love me, make her crawl, right? That's not love. Wanting somebody to crawl, wanting somebody to be in pain, you know, is not love. That's obsession. That's like, you know, there's something not quite right about that. And then as we see, you know, not in this episode, but as we see moving through the series, his love for Buffy is a mature love. It's a love he doesn't want. It's a love he does not embrace. You know, I mean, eventually he does, but for the most part, he resists that idea that he's in love with her. You know, but it is just about loving her. When we finally get to Spike's speech at the end of season 7 in Chosen, you know, where he says, it's not because I want you. It's not because I think I can have you. It's because I love who you are. I love how you try. Right? That there is this essence in Buffy that is real love for him. And, you know, and it's funny because at the end of this episode, we have Buffy saying, I can fool Giles.
And I can fool my friends. But I can't fool myself. Or Spike for some reason.
I love that so hard. It's so good.
Know.
It's so good.
Cool.
Now,
and that's the thing, because they really do see each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I wonder, like, that feels like great foreshadowing of the Buffy Spike connection, but I don't think that was on purpose.
I don't think at this point it was. I think at this point it was just ironic.
Yeah.
You know, but the fact that he can see her and he always sees exactly who she is really interesting. And, you know, we're going to see Spike love Buffy in a spectrum.
Sure.
Like, he's going to love her in ways that are completely destructive and also love her in ways that are pure, you know, and complete. You know, and it's funny because I've talked a lot, you know, in my work, and I've talked about this in the early days of Still Pretty when I was doing it by myself and going through seasons 6 and 7, about the difference between a love story and a romance, you know, and this idea of romantic love and what that is versus friendship love or other kinds of love. And the thing is that Angel and Buffy are a romance and Spike and Buffy are a love story. Now, I think that there is love in Angel and Buffy's story, so don't at me, all the Angel people who get insane when I compare Angel and Buffy and Angel and Spike and Buffy. Just sit back. It's fine. We don't have to agree. I'm just making a point. So romance is all hyperbole and drama. It's Heathcliff out on the moors. You know, it's like a vampire with a soul in love with a slayer. They want to be together, but they're star-crossed, and then they get together, but then he loses his soul and he's still a vampire, and da-da-da-da-da. And the thing about Angel and Buffy is that when they can't be together romantically, they can't be together at all. Like, here is this moment at the end where she says, I can't see you anymore unless you can tell me that you don't love me. Which is interesting because if he says he doesn't love her, does that mean she doesn't love him? Like,
I don't,
doesn't it?
Yeah, that weird, but okay. It fits into
it is, but it's a wonderful moment.
It's a great moment,
mean, like,
and I love it.
For the drama of the moment, that's hugely romantic, you know?
Yeah.
But in the reality of like a love relationship, which can exist without romance, like a love story will exist independent of romance. A romance can exist independent of a love story. You can have both of those together. A lot of romances out there exist independent of a love story, which is where they fall down because they're about the hyperbole and the drama and the, Heathcliff on the moors and like all of that bullshit, which by the way, I hate Wuthering Heights, but we'll talk about that some other day. Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Whatever.
Maybe we'll talk about it right now.
It's fucking terrible. And Jane Eyre and Rochester, for Christ's sake. Oh my God. Okay. One of these days, maybe we'll do a Patreon extra where we just talk about that bullshit. But anyway, so we've built up culturally this idea of this like romantic experience, this wild, doomed romance, and like how heartbreaking it is because of that longing, that it makes us feel. And it's wonderful and terrible, But the love stories to me are the ones that I really love. I mean, I'm a writer of romance. I've always written romance novels, or novels that at least have romance at a central part of their story. And the thing is that what I really love and what really matters to me are like the love stories, and we have tons of those all throughout Buffy. We've got Buffy and Giles. We've got Willow and Buffy. We've got Buffy and Dawn, Willow and Giles, Willow and Xander. Like there's love stories everywhere that are not romantic, but are truly like a huge part of what it is about Buffy that we love and that we love to experience, But Buffy and Spike are a really interesting love story. They are not romantic. Like they have a romantic relationship when they get together in season 6 and they start having sex. And then of course season 7 has these, really strong romantic overtones to everything in their relationship. So there's all of that going on. And it's a little bit weird, but primarily this is an intense love story because they are so ultimately and honestly connected. It is this honesty that they have with each other, which sort of comes from the fact that they don't care. Like she doesn't care what he thinks of her.
Yeah.
And because of that, she's never trying to, tiptoe around his tender feelings or make him feel better or whatever. Like throughout all of it, even when they're together, there's this brutal honesty at the heart of their relationship, which I think opens up that space for real love, because without honesty, there cannot be real love.
Right.
Unless you are completely honest and open with somebody and they know who you actually are, the love is always going to be somewhat fragile.
Right. Because you can't love something, you can't connect with something that you can't access. So that authenticity, when you're truly honest, you're truly authentic and open to being seen, which is really what Buffy is all about. I mean, as a character, we talk a lot about Buffy wanting a normal life. And I have poo-pooed this idea quite a bit on the podcast, but the topic came up in Discord a while ago and helped me sort of tease out that it's not so much a normal life that Buffy wants. The normal life is kind of a way of expressing this desire to be seen, to be open and authentic, and not have to lie or hide or tiptoe around someone's, concern or feelings or any of that. And she has that with Spike.
Yeah. Well, because he can understand her in a way that nobody else can. And I would argue not even Angel.
Yeah.
Like he sees not just her amazing qualities, but he also sees her darkness and he gets it and he understands, what that's about. And Angel, I think, is so consumed by his own guilt and darkness that he doesn't see that. Buffy for him is light. Buffy for him is air and sunlight and everything that he can't otherwise have, But Buffy for Spike, he sees everything about who she is because she's not trying to hide any of that from him, which is something that happens in romantic relationships because people are so obsessed with the I need this person to love me. That they pretend to be whatever it is they think that person is going to want, whether that be nefarious when somebody is deliberately pretending to try to have a conquest,
right?
Or just kind of like this innocent fear of having that person see everything that we are, this fear that they will then not be able to love us because we're somehow unworthy. And with Spike and Buffy, they both kind of start at this space of not necessarily unworthiness, but I don't care if you think I'm worthy.
Right.
I don't care. And from that relationship, they see exactly who the other one is all the time.
Right.
They are always completely honest with each other. And it is that lack of desire to possess, at least definitely for Buffy. She never has a desire to possess Spike, although he does get that desire to possess her in later seasons. But at that point, they've already built up that base of knowing and understanding each other,
Well,
and so then he tries to be, quote unquote, good to the best of his abilities, which are not great because he can't understand what goodness is. So he's never going to be able, without a soul, he's never going to be able to understand, what love is. And later on in season 6, she tells him, you don't know what love is.
Yeah.
You can't know. You don't have a soul. And that, of course, spawns the third act of Spike's, journey through this story, which is when he gets his soul, for that purpose. And then once he does, realizes that he truly didn't have any idea what the hell he was doing, But I find this, no, Spike is so interesting. I could spend, honestly, just years talking about Spike, which actually is what I do, because once we get into season 4, that's going to be 99% of the discussion, because I'm going to be like, oh my God, Spike. But there's so much really interesting, I think, philosophical discussion happening in Buffy around what is love and how does it work. We have all these love stories.
Yeah.
So many love stories in Buffy, and all of which at different points are central. I think the Buffy and Willow love story is hugely central to the entire run of this, show.
Yeah.
And we get caught up in the hyperbolic romance story, and it becomes Buffy and Angel or Buffy and Spike, and which is better, Spike or Angel, and it doesn't fucking matter. But anyway, whatever it is that interests you and pulls you in, that's what matters. So,
Right.
for you, for somebody else, it could be Buffy and Angel. For me, it's Buffy and Spike. It's okay. People get so passionately aligned and identified with the ship of their particular choice without realizing you can be on all the ships at once.
You can be on all the ships. Yeah.
I'm on all the ships. I'm on all the ships. But I think that I'm most engaged by what the Spike and Buffy storyline has to say about true, honest love, And it's something that, in all of my love relationships in my life, I've always been, as soon as I love somebody, I will really try so hard to protect them from everything. I will be dishonest in ways that are not that are not malevolently, come to. It's out of a desire to protect them and out of a desire to make them happy and make them feel good. And then that honesty, becomes somewhat separated from that, And so when I see the Spike and Buffy, storyline, I look at that honesty, even though sometimes it's cruel and it can be incredibly destructive between the two of them. And I think, God, that's wonderful, to know that you have had the courage to show somebody your entire self and they still love you. That's something truly special. And I think that is really hard to come by. And in these, wild romantic stories that we have so loved, for so many years, I think the only one off the top of my head, the only classic love story I can think of where there is that level of honesty is Darcy and Elizabeth, which also happens to be, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. For those who don't know who I'm talking about, get thee to the A&E 1995 BBC Colin Firth show and read the book, and we'll talk later. But Darcy and Elizabeth have that honesty too, because in the beginning, they are not inclined to lie to each other or to be dishonest about who they are. And even when Darcy proposes to her, it's with, well, as you are way below me and your family's unbelievably insane, and it will be to my great shame to marry you. But if you would marry me, anyway. Right, exactly. Like that proposal scene is so honest. And I think it's that level of honesty at the base of their relationship that when they first got to know each other, they weren't playing these hyperbolic Heathcliff on the, moors games. That love story is so believable and true underneath all of that. And that's really, I think, what it is that we want from these romantic stories. But romance in and of itself, I mean, the question is, romance in and of itself, romantic love in and of itself, does it have a shelf life? Is there an expiration date stamped on it because it can only last so long?
That is a fascinating question because it is so heightened. Or at least that's what we've been. That is the story that we tell about the story that is romantic love. Okay, there's a third piece here. We've been talking about love and romance, but there's also friendship, which Spike, first of all, I love Spike's self-awareness around love. Like part of what enables his bullshit detector for the Buffy Angel nonsense is his own understanding of really being victimized by love. He says, I may be love's bitch, but at least I'm man enough to admit it. And that whole definition is fascinating to me. That there's something about being in love that makes a person miserable. That there's this there's the fighting element and there's the hatred element to being in love. And Spike has this very hyperbolic sort of view of love, like coupled love. Spike doesn't give us a definition of friendship. No. He does suggest that it's less than, that it's, he's deeply sorrowful and offended that Drew would tell him that they could still be friends.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm so curious as to what Spike thinks friends means, Friends, how could she be so cruel? Like, I don't know.
Does Spike have friends? Spike doesn't have friends.
No, he does not. He does not have friends.
He doesn't do friendship. It's not his thing. I mean, even with him and Angel, and, if you go through all of the backstory that we eventually get of him and Angel and their relationship, Angel was with Darla and Spike was with Drusilla, and they were in this group together because of the love relationship. And I guess that there's, safety in numbers when you're a vampire being hunted by Holtz throughout. And that's for the Angel series. If you haven't seen that, go watch that too. It's terrible in a lot of ways, but also amazing. The highs are so high and the lows are so low. But I mean, his relationship with Angel, is really interesting because it is almost always kind of a rivalry. And we have that first moment in School Hard. Yeah. When Angel comes in, he says, "You were my sire, man." Like they had and he's so happy, and jealous, and he gives him a big hug. And he's like, "How are you doing? What are you doing here?" But later, as we sort of, elaborate on that relationship, it's always a rivalry. It's almost like a brotherhood that they have. So they're not really friends either, but there is like a deep, I think, love between Spike and Angel as well that we explore, I think, a lot more over in the Angel series, than we do here, although we do get a little bit of it. When we get to the end of season 7 and we have a little bit more of Angel and Spike, in their sort of relationship.
It's real subtextual, but I definitely read it as a queer relationship.
I love that.
Angel and Spike, I mean, there's definitely the kind of push-pull of romantic love with them, too. The way they are so mean to each other.
Right.
The way that, and they're vampires, they're bad guys. So that kind of like, cruel to be kind vibe, I think really works for them. But when Angel loses his soul and goes back to Spike and Drusilla, they are, I mean, it's party mode. And there's that wonderful moment where Angel snarls at Spike and then kisses him on the forehead, and Spike just laughs, and it's so delightful. But something that Spike does that is, you know, maybe textual is when he's insulting Angel, ensouled Angel, he uses words to suggest a kind of femininity or homosexuality. He uses, you know, he says, you know, like, and I don't want to repeat a lot of what Spike says about Angel, but he definitely, there's that kind of, I'm going to be homophobic because I maybe have feelings about this person. I definitely get that from Spike, especially with ensouled Angel, because of Spike's relationship to love and you know, and loving the world and feeling things very deeply. Spike experiences things very deeply.
He does. And he embraces the world, really does.
And that bond with Angel, I think, is part of that. The way, and you know, the definition that Spike gives us of love involves fighting. You know, you'll fight,
and you'll shag, and you'll hate each other till it makes you quiver, but you'll never be friends.
Now, if that's not Angel and Spike, I don't know what is.
You know, no, I think that there is a bit of that in their relationship. I mean, we never get anything textually from that. But there is a sense of that with him. And Spike, it's interesting though, does not make friends.
No.
You know, like he becomes part of the team, especially after Buffy dies in season 5, right? You know, season 6, he's part of the team. But he does, I think, become real friends with Dawn. I think he develops, like, I think Dawn is a real friendship for him.
That's
she's important to him.
I hadn't thought of that. And I'll have to watch for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of it is because he loves Buffy. Buffy died. Dawn meant a lot to Buffy.
Right.
And so he protects Dawn. But I mean, if you look at the kinds of scenes that indicate real friendship, you know, when Dawn wants to bring Joyce back after she dies and Spike goes with her to help her do it. You know, Spike is with Dawn. Spike and Dawn actually do have, I think, what is for Spike like a new kind of relationship that is truly friends. Like he's there, he's fighting beside Giles and Willow and Tara and Xander and Anya and everybody. Like he's part of the team, but he's not friends with any of those people. He's actually friends with Dawn. You know, which is why when Dawn says, "You sleep, right?" You know, after she finds out what he did to Buffy in season 6, she's like, "If you ever come near Buffy again, I will set you on fire."
So good.
Like that's a really big moment for him. So anyway, we're getting way outside of Lover's Walk.
Outside of this. Okay, but friends.
Talking about love and friendship, though, bring us back to friendship.
So friendship. So our like friend partnership here is Willow and Xander, right? So do we have Willow and Oz versus Willow and Xander as love versus friendship?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Willow's been in love with Xander for ages.
Yeah. It's such an interesting... The Willow... Okay. All right. The Willow Xander train wreck is just... I can't look away, you guys. Like, yeah. And part of it is that I would like to see a version of this story where people are comfortable having different relationships with different people. You know, friendships between people who might be attracted to each other or might, because of their sexual orientations, have the potential to be attracted to each other. But it is possible to get different things from different partners because, of course, we are, you know, varied in our wants and needs. And I think it's interesting that this kind of, you know, one and only narrative, this, you know, there is one person for every person, is so in the soil. I mean, it gets so baked into all of our narratives. You know, when the reality is that some people in life are monogamous, and that can be lovely and wonderful, and some people aren't, and that can also be lovely and wonderful, but our baked in cultural messaging can cause so much trouble for folks. You know, this idea that if you're in a relationship with someone, of course you're monogamous, and of course any intimacy outside of that relationship, even with a close friend who has known you all your life, is problematic at best.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that also comes from if you promise monogamy to somebody and then you cheat, like if everybody's open, if it's an open relationship and everybody's on board and they're like, yeah, that's okay, then that's fine, but I mean, like, you've got to have that conversation. And if you haven't had that conversation, yeah, the default, presumption is monogamy, which I think should not be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's problematic. Yeah. I think it's problematic that we culturally assume that everyone is monogamous, that if you are in a relationship, it is monogamous and just by default. And I'm not suggesting that Buffy as a show should have tackled the idea of a messy polyamorous quad among high school seniors. Like that is not, that's not what I'm suggesting. Although if that show exists, please let me know because I would love to watch
Roswell, New Mexico. No, not the old Roswell, the new Roswell, New Mexico. I've actually been watching. It's very interesting, and I won't. No, they haven't gone that far, but there's more interesting stuff happening with those relationships, and they're also 10 years out of high school. So I mean, there's that.
Sure.
But actually, I'm finding a lot of interesting things are happening over in that show. But I mean, like culturally, at the time that Buffy was on, I don't think people were really ready to have that discussion. It was hard enough to get Willow to be, lesbian.
Yeah.
To have Willow have that transition in her life and to appropriately show that relationship battling standards and practices the whole time.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a whole thing.
Yeah. I'm just calling out cis heteropatriarchy because I can't help it.
It's terroir. No, it's in there, and you're absolutely right. I mean, you're absolutely right about all of it. But yeah, these are the presumptions that we sometimes fail to question, and in failing to question them, culturally, I think that gives us a lot of problems in our regular lives.
Yeah. Well, and it creates a sense of, we've got this like conflict machine of, these are the rules that you follow in relationships,
right.
But like, who says those are the rules? I just think it's an interesting discussion to have. I also think it's hilarious and bizarre that we have this cultural narrative that says that there's no sex in a friend's relationship. I just find that really funny. And maybe it's because I have a bad habit of like developing crushes on friends. Oops. Whoops. Sorry, not sorry, guys. But, yeah, I don't know. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think that's very funny that we culturally have this idea that like friendship is one thing and people you have sex with is another thing. So if you are friends with someone and then you want to have sex with them, that is a problem. It's weird when you break it down. That's all I'm saying.
It is all a little bit weird. I mean, it's funny because like I personally separate, like I completely, I don't know if it's because I've been brainwashed by whatever, if it's just the way that I am, but like there's sex and there's friends. And you can go from friends to sex to romance. But like if you try to go back from romance to friends, that can sometimes be difficult. I did that with my first husband, though. We're great friends now, and it's awesome.
That's
He's
the
best.
cultural narrative too, though.
It's like, really there is that separation, this really stark line between friends and love. And I think that the best love relationships, when I was writing my books, like the best relationships like come from friendships, true friendships.
Yeah.
Those are really, really fun to write.
Yeah. Which of course, if we're going to, let's define our terms, Dr. Kelly Jones style here, like,
hey, Kelly, calling out.
Define your fucking terms.
Define your fucking
friendship.
terms.
I mean, so then what is friendship then? It's like affection and connection, but without
it's love without romance.
It's heart
but
feelings
romance,
without pants feelings. Is that what we're like getting at?
I guess. But like, I mean, these all, God, we could do, and we're going to apparently do an entire episode just on this.
This is what we're talking about. Sorry, everyone.
But it's really interesting, though. I mean, you bring up this really interesting point. Like I was saying at the beginning, like we have one word for love, and yet there are so many different kinds of love. And you can, the kind of love that you feel for your kids, the kind of love that you feel for your friends, and then the kind of love that you feel for like a partner. Mm-hmm. And romance is, I think, And I'm not sure, but I mean, looking at it feels to me like this definition of love in a way that is inherently, terminable. Like it's a terminal relationship from the beginning. Like that it's never going to last because romance is based on these things that are not actually real.
That is fascinating.
And
that
friendship is based on things that are actually real. And when you have a love romantic partner relationship that is based on true friendship, right, which comes from that honesty and from really knowing each other, right, that's where things can go really well, but it's not the heightened drama and wildness of these romantic stories that we love. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it, there is a romance in every single story. Pretty much almost every single story has at least a romantic subplot, a love interest of some kind, because we love that romance. But we so rarely get it right. Mm-hmm. The way that Darcy and Elizabeth did, the way that I think that Spike and Buffy does in this very complicated, highly destructive way, but they genuinely know each other and they genuinely love each other regardless of whether they're sleeping together or not. Mm-hmm. And I think that has something to it. So what Spike is talking about, love, he's talking about romance.
Yeah.
He's talking about wildfire, passion. And I mean, we love that shit because that shit is awesome, man. When you get the right moment with the right person, that shit can fly and it's nice, but it is so temporal. It is so locked in a moment and it's not every day. And I think that like one of these things, everybody gets married because of this great love or whatever, and then you have to get up every day and go to work and take care of the kids. And that kind of like, kills that. And then you're stuck with this person who you may not be great friends with.
Yeah. I mean, marriage is just standing in front of the drawer that your spouse needs to open. Like that's just like marriage is just being in each other's way in the same space. Like that.
Right. I mean, but we go to marriage based on this idea of this wild romantic love. Yeah. And yet essential friendship love, can oftentimes be missing from that. And then when the wild romance fades away, you're left in this space, where you're standing in front of the drawer, like that. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, I have no answers to any of this. These are all questions. I have no answers to any of it. I love romance. I love romantic stories. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm in it. But as I learn more, as I experience more about, wild romantic love and then real life, there's something in our cultural idea of wild romantic love that plays into passion, but not into real love, like the kind of love that Buffy and Spike have. And while Spike's love for Buffy is, I think, more prevalent, like her love for him is, very complicated because he's a monster.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very difficult for her to actually understand what she feels for him as love, but he also, monster or not, knows her in a way that nobody else can ever know her.
Yeah.
And being seen. I mean, I think that being seen is at the core of what a real love. Oh God, this is so interesting. When you said that before, you said that earlier, that being seen by someone, being completely, totally, honestly seen by someone, that in itself is so much more powerful and so much more permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's what's really interesting. We go for all of these like outward expressions of love and passion. That's what Spike's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But truly being seen is ugly and messy. And so unbelievably vulnerable for the person being seen.
Yes. Yes.
And yet the connection that comes from that essential being seen is, I think, what we're really after.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
God,
I think that's exactly it. And I think we see that really clearly with Spike in this episode. I mean, he puts out these bids for connection with really everyone he comes across.
Yeah.
I mean, talk to me a little bit about Spike and Joyce, because
oh my God,
right?
Spike and Joyce. Like, I love this whole thing because, we see Spike at Joyce's, right? And it's this wonderful setup because Angel, of course, is the good vampire and Spike's the bad vampire.
Right.
But what Joyce knows is that Spike is the good vampire for a given value of good, and that Angel is the bad vampire who was killing everybody. And she doesn't know anything that's going on. So we have this wonderful setup and Spike's there and he's talking to her and they're having that wonderful connection. And then Angel comes in, but he's not invited and he can't get into the house and all of this stuff. I mean, it's this wonderful setup. But when you look back at the genesis of this, right? He was leaving the factory to go get a love spell book and to get the ingredients needed, right, for Willow to do her spell on Drusilla. He doesn't need Joyce for that. He doesn't need Joyce for that. Why does he go to see Joyce? Joyce, if anything, sets up Buffy, and he knows Angel's back at that point, but like Buffy and Angel coming in and ruining his plans. That's what that does. But this is exactly the way that Spike is, right? He doesn't do things because it is the smart play. He does things because he feels his way through the world. And in that moment, what he felt was, I want my mommy.
Yep. I love it so much. I love it. He goes to Joyce because he wants a cup of hot cocoa with those little marshmallows and to
little marshmallows.
Bare his soul about the girl who broke his heart. It's so good. Oh my
Exactly.
God.
And we never get that moment of him choosing to go see Joyce. And if you don't think about it, you're just, because the movement of those lines of conflict is so beautiful, of course you got to have this moment where he's behind Joyce making vampire faces at Angel,
that's
right?
so funny.
It's so wonderful, but I love that Joyce sits down with him, talks to him, makes him cocoa, tries to help him work through his feelings and through his emotions. And he's trying to figure out his whole stuff. He goes to Joyce for solace. And I love the relationship between Spike and Joyce. The first time he met Joyce, she hit him in the head with an axe, which of course the way to Spike's heart is through violence, right? Get away from my daughter, right? Then in Becoming Part 2, he just sat on the couch with her awkwardly and made small talk,
oh God,
which was
so perfect.
But here he comes to her because he wants a mother's comfort, and given his relationship to his own mother, which is something we'll go into in much more depth later on in the series.
Oh, boy.
It is so interesting how he turns to Joyce looking to be like the little boy again. And, and what's funny is that we're going to see that parent-child relationship between Spike and Giles, Buffy's other parent.
Yes.
Right? In season 4, he's living with Giles for a while, almost like a kid that came home from college and can't get a job, right? We've got season 6 in Tabula Rasa. He naturally feels this childhood rebellion against Giles and decides that Giles is his father.
Yes.
Right. In Restless, this is during a dream sequence, but he's on the swings with Giles wearing an identical tweed suit to Giles. He's a mini Giles, right? He is like dark Giles.
So great.
So it's so interesting, although it does, because he sort of shares her parental figures, sort of sets up this Buffy and Spike as brother and sister, which is a place we do not want to go with this relationship, considering where it's going. But it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, they're his in-laws, I guess you could look at them that way, but it's really, it's so good.
God, the Hellmouth laws of marriage. I'm just like, okay, so you're vampire-in-law, and then you're whatever. Oh my
All right.
goodness.
So one other thing I want to talk about now that we have beaten love to death, which I think is really, really good because it's such a central part to this whole episode, is the nature of magic, right? It's clear that magic that aims to enforce your will over others, like anything that subverts the free will of somebody else, has clear splashback effects. I mean, we've seen that before, right? Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered with Xander's love spell, which of course he brings up to Willow right now. And Willow was the one whose free will was subverted in that episode, so she should really understand that, basically all of Willow's arc in season 6, where she is trying to subvert her will over everything, including Buffy's death. She didn't allow Buffy to die. She brought Buffy back because she thought that was the way the world should be, and of course pulls Buffy out of heaven, which is a really, really interesting place we're going to talk about a lot when we get there. But it's like with great power comes great responsibility. You have to realize what you're doing, and most most of the magical spells that have gone awry in the Buffyverse are from Willow's attempts to shape the world as she wants it to be. Like if you think about season 4, Something Blue, right?
Oh,
My will be done, so mote it
Yeah.
be, right? So it's a lesson that Willow struggles with so much. And she actually has a classic villain mentality. The world sucks, so let me shape it the way I think it should be rather than go through the pain of accepting it as it is. And because she decides that she knows what's best, that is classic villain territory. And yet we have it in one of our most, powerful heroes in this, this story. I mean, we do get her as the big bad at the end of season 6 eventually.
Right.
Where we have that turn. But it's really interesting how she does have that villain mentality.
Yeah, I mean, it's ego, right? It's like, I know what I'm doing. She goes into the shop and the shopkeeper's like, are you sure? You know what you're doing?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, yeah, I know how to work a love spell. So, really? Okay. All right.
So has she done this before?
Well, we know. I mean, we know that she's been playing around with magic. But then when she's with Spike and she's afraid, she's like, oh, I'm not a real witch. And I don't know there if she's downplaying her abilities because she doesn't want to do this thing because she's afraid, or if she really is, Spike is our truth seer at this point. Like he has the bullshit detector. So, maybe she's not as powerful as all that, except that we know, we saw what happened to her, when she gave Angel his soul back. So Willow's got some serious
Willow's got some
magical power.
She's got mojo.
Yeah.
No, she's definitely
and I
got
love
that.
I love this like it is kind of a classic villain sort of a space where she's brought Xander to the chemistry lab. She's lied to him about why he's coming there. And then she's like, oh, I thought it would work better if you didn't know. Which is
right.
So
exactly.
like, really?
Yeah, that's dark.
That's pretty dark. But what I love, we get a nice little bit of character development or character, I don't know, growth maybe from Xander where he figures it out. He's like, wait a second, this is love spell stuff, which I love.
You're making me hold a raven's feather.
He's like, hold on a minute. Like, it's so great because it suggests to me that he's been paying attention. He's
learned a thing.
He's
believe it or not,
absorbed a thing or two about magic and how it works and what parts you use for what sorts of spells. And I'm just like, okay, points to Xander for knowing what's what.
For having a sense of it. But there are times, though, when you can use magic and it's okay. Like if you're stopping magical or supernatural evil, we've had Willow do that a ton. We've had the protection spell, the de-inviting Angel to Buffy's house, right? So, I mean, I think that is a protection spell, things that are working on other supernatural things that also have magical power. So you've got that. You don't have the kind of power differential that you have when you're doing a magical spell on, regular humans, mundane creatures, right? If you're working with supernatural things and you have less of a power differential. And so that makes it okay because we're on the same ground. There's also the breaking of curses, when she was restoring Angel's soul, which of course was something that somebody mundane put on somebody supernatural. So that was okay because of that power differential, I guess. Because even though you're subverting Angel's free will, but still. So, I mean, like everything, there are rules to it. And it's really interesting about when the magic is okay. Like when it's in service of saving lives or protecting people, from supernatural elements. It's like the same way that Buffy can stake a vampire, but she can't kill a bad human. Because it's different, because there are different rules for that sort of thing. But it also brings like this idea that, and I'm a little jumping the gun on this because we're not going to see Anya until next week. But since we're here, I mean, it's interesting that for demons who are inherently magical and supernatural, there does not seem to be a real splashback effect of using those magical powers on humans. Like Anya spends thousands of years being a vengeance demon, inflicting her vision of justice justice on bad men. And there does not appear to be any sort of splashback from that onto her until she becomes human and then goes back to being a vengeance demon. And at that point, what the splashback is not a magical splashback. It's not a spell gone awry. It's just that she has guilt and regret because she is so freshly not human. She's got the feels, you know, because you pay for what you do. Like, nobody gets away with anything, because no matter what, if you've done something terrible, you bring that with you into everything that you do for the rest of your life. And the justice may not be visible, but it's there. Like, nobody gets away with anything. So I think that's kind of like an interesting take on that whole thing, you know. And of course, we'll talk about the nature of vengeance versus justice and all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions that I had, and I think we may need to wait a little while to answer this, but it's just something I was kind of interested in, is did Anya have a soul when she was a demon?
That's a really good
I mean,
question.
I think that did she, when she was turned human, she had a soul, she was originally human. Yes. She didn't lose it when she became a demon and get it back suddenly when she became, because she wasn't like evil. She was out for justice and vengeance and, you know, fighting for women who had been wronged and all that kind of thing. I don't know. It's interesting. We're going to put a hold on that question because we're definitely going to come back to that. But in the meantime, I want to tell you that this episode of Still Pretty is brought to you by RegrettableSpells.com. RegrettableSpells.com specializes in all the magical spells you really shouldn't do because of the inevitable magical splashback effect. But when you're truly desperate to do something mystically dumb, RegrettableSpells.com is the place to meet all your karmic slap-in-the-face needs. Want to force someone to love you? RegrettableSpells.com will hook you up with our Love Spell Special, complete with Organic Eye of Newt and a hanky to wipe your tears when it backfires and she falls in love with a Chaos Demon. Need to cover the face of your rival with boils? RegrettableSpells.com will give you a 2-for-1 deal wherein you also get covered with boils and get the jump on the magical forces that be, which would certainly do something more creative and less medically treatable to you. Go to RegrettableSpells.com and use the code Saw That Coming to get your discount and karmic retribution today. Or, instead, you could choose to take the $3 you might spend on subverting the free will of others and give it directly to Chipperish Media so that we can keep making the great podcasts you love, like Still Dead about Angel the series hosted by me and Dr. Kelly Jones. Listen Up A-Holes about the Marvel Cinematic Universe hosted by me and superhero scholar Joshua Unruh. Orgasm about explosive inspiration from Dr. Kelly Jones and our own Noelle LaCroix. And our Star Wars podcast, Metaphors Be With You, hosted by Rob Hyrett. And very soon, we're going to have a new Good Omens podcast coming from me and Dr. Kelly Jones. Welcome to the end times. Go to chipperish.com to find out more and visit patreon.com/chipperish to find out more about how you can support us in all the things that we do.
Awesome.
That was done on one long breath. That's fine.
Woo!
Like running a goddamn marathon doing those things. All right. So what else do we got here to talk about during Lover's Walk?
Well, all right. So you maybe put the love idea to bed a little early because I want to talk about the Buffy Angel dynamic as contrasted with the Willow Xander dynamic.
All right. Well, let's take that love idea back out of bed and play around with it for a while.
Let's.
That sounds dirty. I didn't mean it to sound that way, but it came out that way.
You know what? We're going with it. It's fine. We'll go with it. So Angel, when we see Angel and Buffy together, they are trying so hard, you guys. Like, Buffy tells Angel they're friends and he picks it up and runs with it, and he says, she's talking about going to college and, what should she do? And he says, as a friend.
Right.
And then Buffy gets her feelings hurt. God damn it.
Right. But he clearly doesn't want her to go. He just he wants what's best for her.
But they're like doing this little dance of like, okay, I'm going to try to be supportive. And like, how do I, what words do I use? And I'm going to be very careful to make it clear what is happening or not happening with us. Meanwhile, Willow and Xander are just like big feelings.
Yes.
Just all the big feelings. It's like hormonal, balls to the wall, bundles of emotion.
Yeah.
And we get this so beautifully in the way those emotions show up, not just when they're together, but in our Willow Oz Pezwitch scene. And in the Cordelia Xander, locker door material scene. Yeah. It's so lovely. And they're so nicely complementary in the settings and the blocking, those two locker scenes. Willow and Xander both occupy the left side of the frame
Yep.
in their respective scenes, while Oz and Cordelia are on the right.
Mhm.
And it's probably a stretch to say that they're on the right because they are right.
Right.
And Xander and Willow are wrong. Right? But whatever.
But it's a nice call out, though. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just this like, Angel and Buffy are trying so hard not to be open and
Yes.
honest with each other. And Willow and Xander kind of can't help but being open. They can't help it.
Right.
He's
Because they're
talking,
lying to everybody else. They're being honest with each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Xander's saying, we're just like really good friends. And can I kiss your earlobe?
Yeah.
It's just, oh no, like this is not,
Mhm.
you can't, they just cannot keep it. They can't keep it in. They just are so attracted to each other and they're so in
Yeah.
love and it's so difficult.
Mhm.
But it's the vulnerability thing,
Right.
right? I mean,
Mhm.
Angel and Buffy know what's up. They're not going to be vulnerable because if they do that, then they have to, cop to how they really feel about each other.
Well, and you have to also deal with the consequences of everything he did. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got a soul now, and that's great, but he also killed her friends and
Yeah.
and did some really terrible things. And how do you come back from that? I mean, again, holding Angel responsible for things that he does when the demon has control is, a questionable thing and something we don't do in any other context, but it's, he's got his soul back and he wouldn't ever do that again. But if they're together and they sleep together again, then he might do that again. And so it's the kind of thing where they really, they cannot be together, but they cannot not be together. And how do you live in that middle space?
Yeah. And we're going to find out.
Yes, we certainly are. We certainly are. But as you talk about vulnerability, I think that, in a lot of my writing classes, when I talk about building character, I talk about the essential importance of vulnerability, which is something that we don't talk about, I think, as much when it comes to character in general. We talk about characterization and who are they and what are they like, and give them the, Myers-Briggs test and find out if they're an ENFP or whatever the fuck, But really what it comes right down to is that vulnerability properly applied, without being too much overdone, weaponized, any of that, but real true vulnerability actually gives you such great access to a character. And when you've got a character like Spike, we love Spike for a lot of reasons, he's funny, he's charming, he's fun to watch, he's got this passion for life. He's not always the smartest guy. He doesn't always think things through, but he's got all these wonderful qualities that we just love. And it's just such a shame that he's such a bad guy. And here we go in this moment where he cracks a bottle and holds the shard to Willow's eye.
Yeah.
And threatens her. And in a half a second later, he goes to crying on her shoulder, and that vulnerability has the power to, we instantly turn with him and, love him in that moment, and it is so incredibly, it's to see him cry and be so hurt and feel all this stuff so openly. And Willow's response, I mean, they're there.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly good, and it speaks to vulnerability, is essential to any major characters that you've got. And I think that having a sense of anybody's vulnerability is going to be good no matter what you're writing, no matter whether it's a small character, or whatever. There's always, when any character that we're going to get to know at any level, you need to think about where their vulnerability is and what that's about, because it's what gives us access to those characters and makes us love them. I mean, Faith is so incredibly vulnerable in so many ways, while at the same time being so tough. And that's what makes us, gives us that access to her, is that incredible vulnerability, even when she's doing terrible things, as we're going to see, as we move through the season and next. She's still got that incredible vulnerability, which I think is what makes her work so well. And it's what makes Spike work so well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with both of them, a lot of that vulnerability is in the details of how they exist in the world around them. I mean, Spike has this great relationship with food.
Right.
And I don't mean, vamping out and feeding on people, but like
not living
human food.
Human food. Yeah.
Human food.
Which he doesn't need. Right?
No.
Yeah.
No. But it's extremely vulnerable and relatable. You know, he's opening up to Joyce, and then he says, "You got any of those little marshmallows?" And his little weak smile as he asks just drives it home that like it's comfort and pleasure that he's after, and he very much is a creature of comfort and pleasure in a lot of ways, even though he likes violence and death and
right. But I mean, he's fully open to the entire range of experience. I mean, he's hedonistic in every way. It's fabulous.
Yep. And we will see more with Spike and hedonic eating as we go on. And it just lights me up every time it happens because, as he tells us, like, he likes the world. There's
Manchester
great
United.
stuff in it. And he's, even when he's heartbroken and miserable and, sobering up when he would rather not be, he still loves the world and all the mini marshmallows in it. It makes me so happy.
No, he really does. I also love this idea that we have here of Spike going soft.
Yes.
He says it was the truce with Buffy that did it. Drew said I'd gone soft. And then Lenny, one of the mayor's vampire goon squad, says, I heard you'd gone soft like baby food, right? And it's really interesting because Spike is, this William the Bloody. He's this terrible killer, right?
Yeah.
And yet we have this whole thing that he's doing in pursuit of those hedonistic values. He goes to see Joyce in pursuit of that comfort and of course the cocoa and the marshmallows, and he gets Willow to make this love spell, and he's got Willow and Xander, in the basement of the factory. And at the end, after he's had this fight, after he's had that experience, after his blood gets pumping again, he doesn't try to kill anybody. Yeah. He's like, your friends were in the factory. That's fine. Go ahead and get them. I don't care. And he just leaves town thrilled at his, ability to go get Drew back, know? And it's funny because this idea of Spike being soft because he is in pursuit of things other than, violence is part of that hedonistic pleasure. But I mean, it's not in and of itself about doing as much damage as possible. It's about how he feels in the moment. So, I mean, he could stay and do a lot more damage. He could go back and kill both Willow and Xander if he wanted to,
But there's no fun in it anymore.
Right. It's not for the fun. Like, if it's not serving his fun, then is that in a sense what makes him soft?
Yeah. Yeah, and I love Spike so much. I love the way he just pops back into Sunnydale in this episode, gives us a bunch of great crunchy stuff to work with, and then zooms off down the highway.
I know. It's so fantastic. It is so fantastic. All right, so Noelle, tell me, what are you wearing?
Oh my gosh, we got some great, really meaningful costuming in this episode. Once again, we do a little bit of pink and blue with Xander and Willow, that very, very light blue on Xander and very, very light pink on Willow. When they're in the factory together. But Willow's sheer fuzzy pink sweater.
Yeah.
I don't know. That just feels like everything that is Willow. Like she's it's so sweet because she's so covered up, but also so like cuddly and vulnerable, and I love that sweater.
No, it's fantastic.
And Angel found a shirt.
Yes,
Angel found a shirt. Now it raises the question for me though of like, which is preferable, shirtless Tai Chi Angel or shirted reading Angel?
Oh, reading.
Yeah.
Oh, reading. And the thing is that giving a guy a book, and it's like a French, whatever.
I forget what he's reading.
It's something. It's something obnoxious. It's one of those. It's like, I'm just going to sit here and read my Sartre, like that. But the thing is, though, that I really love about Angel, and this is consistent in him throughout the series, is that he is highly cultured. Like over on Angel the series, we see that he loves ballet. You know, he's very excited about thoughts and ideas and philosophy. And he doesn't show it off. He's not like, well, you know, he doesn't go around like quoting Nietzsche, you know, or anything like that. But he's read it. And like, you know that he has, because of the way that he looks at the world and the way that like Angel in the television series over in Angel the series, he's all about the why. You know, like why do these things happen? What is this about? You know, and that's what always matters more, is answering the why for him, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that while I would find that to be like a cheap, you know, grabbing a shot of him reading, you know, French novels by the fire is this, you know, instant metro pass to, you know, I'm so evolved and cultured. But we actually do see in Angel's everyday characterization that he is very thoughtful, that he's very philosophical, that he does think deeply, and that these are the things that actually would appeal to him. So I got to say, I vote for shirted reading Angel every day and twice on Sundays. How about you?
Well, I appreciate the idea that Angel would take this immortality opportunity to read and explore the arts and, you know, like, I mean, God, if I had 200 years on the planet, you know, I would be reading all the books and seeing all the movies.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, in that moment, when we see him reading, it's such a great visual counterpoint to Spike, who's lurking in the shadows of the mansion and is drunk off his ass and falling over. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. I love the counterpoint between the two of them. Someone we haven't really talked about in this episode is Cordelia.
Oh, yeah.
But she looks absolutely beautiful in every scene she's in. She also looks like a high fashion schoolgirl with her red twin set and the plaid skirt in the opening scene, and then her green plaid skirt and her little blue tank top when the group is discussing bowling. It's super tropey, but I like that she's smart and sexy, and her clothes are doing some of that exposition for us.
Yes, absolutely.
I really appreciate.
And this is the thing is, you know, like whenever they talk about Cordy, you know, or Cordy's clothing, whenever that actually comes into the textual discussion in the dialogue, there's always this sense that she dresses so slutty, and she really doesn't.
No.
You know, I mean, she's actually fairly conservative. I mean, you know, doing the Catholic schoolgirl thing, you know, maybe a little bit provocative in some context, but I think that the fact that she is a schoolgirl, it's okay.
Yeah, well, and some of that, like, dressing slutty, something that I have experienced directly is that when you are busty, people decide that you are dressed slutty because of the way your body shape,
because you're not wearing something up to your neck.
Undeniable. Yeah. But even if you are, if you have breasts and they stick out,
if you're not wearing like a huge blousey shirt to cover everything up, like you should be ashamed.
Yeah.
You know, then you're slutty. And if you are wearing that, then you're not fashionable. And you know, it's a double-edged sword for
it's ridiculous.
Girls.
And I think a lot of the like Cordelia dresses slutty or Cordelia looks like a slut, and you know, we're not going to unpack that word for another hour, even though we totally could.
Yes.
You know, a lot of that idea about Cordelia looking trashy or looking some certain way that implies something about her, you know, in this bullshit patriarchal blah 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 blah, I think has much more to do with her body type and the kind of, you know, va-va-va-voom thing that she has going on, than it does, you know, anything to do with her specific fashion
her choices. It doesn't matter what she wears. People are going to see it as slutty because of her body type.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
exactly. Welcome to the patriarchy.
Right?
Yeah.
Her date night outfit is this like high neck white t-shirt, but it's fitted to her body. Which is curvy. And I don't mean that euphemistically. I mean it like she is truly curvy in the way that Marilyn Monroe was curvy.
Yes.
And I find it fascinating that we have this narrative about like Cordelia and her fashion.
Yeah.
But Yeah. Anyway, so Cordelia looks gorgeous. Her date night outfit is adorable. Her curly hair, her date night hair.
Yes.
I have all the hair envy right now, though. I was noticing everybody's hair this week because I'm growing up my hair. It's driving me insane. It's fine. It's fine. Cordelia giving me serious hair feels. But of course, the other reason for that white, that white top is that then when she falls on the rebar, we can really clearly see. Yeah, that's a little bit of that's a body horror clue often when someone's wearing a lot of white, especially if they don't normally wear a lot of white. You're like, that's going to get bloody real quick.
Exactly.
So, and then someone else we haven't really talked about because he's not really here is Giles.
Yeah.
And this is the first episode where I noticed just how oversized Giles' clothes look.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe I've been watching too much Queer Eye, but Anthony Stewart Head looks like he's swimming in his costume in the brief Giles scene that we get. I don't know how much of that is the style of men's fashion at the time, though I suspect Giles's pleated pants would have seemed dated in the late 90s.
Maybe.
And how much of that is like the de-sexification of Giles because he's supposed to be the dad now, but I was like, it struck me really hard. I was like, wow,
no,
Giles.
they got really big. And the thing is, like, season 1, his tweed suits were fairly fitted, but yeah, all of his clothes have gotten like bigger and bulkier. And in season 4, we're going to move into sweater Giles, right? And all of his sweaters are way too
Giles'
big. Like,
sweater collection.
I know. Everything is way too big. I think the only time we've actually seen the man's body is in Band Candy this season, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it is really interesting.
It's very strange.
I don't know why they've decided to do that.
I mean, yeah, no sexy dad Giles, except that you can't fool us.
Oh, he's still sexy dad Giles.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you can't fool us, costume department. Like
you can't put a sack over that. It's just...
We see the sexy. That's right.
We see the sexy. Anthony Stewart Head sexiness just comes on out no matter what.
Oh my God.
All right. So what do we got for Arc the Patriarchy this week?
Okay, so it's played for humor and it's totally hilarious. We talked about it a little bit already. And Spike unloading on Willow, who is his terrified prisoner, is unacceptable entitled male bullshit. Yes. I mean, but it's also perfect. Like,
it's absolutely perfect.
Spike,
completely typical. But yes, exactly. Like, here are these women, right, between her and Joyce, right? Here are these women who exist to, let me unload and talk about my feelings.
We process how I feel and threaten you. Like,
and with Joyce, it's not so bad because he's not threatening her. He's not, but like, I mean, with Willow, he goes from shoving a broken bottle in her face to weeping on her shoulder. She's supposed to be like, there.
Well, and we see that with Spike and Willow in The Initiative when he has his chip and he tries to bite her. And that is a real uncomfortable scene. And it ends the same way with her comforting him. After he's not able to munch on her in the way that he would like to.
With, of course, in that sexual...
Oh, God.
That sexual analog that they have in that scene in which she is basically comforting him because he is unable to rape her.
Yes.
So there's a lot of... We're gonna definitely unpack that when we get there.
That is a fun scene, and by fun I mean really uncomfortable.
But so beautiful in so many ways. Like,
but so good.
Complicated.
Well, and as Spike likes to remind us, often he's evil.
He's evil.
The
Let's
bad
not
guy.
Forget. Exactly.
So this is like we can enjoy these like really uncomfortable, even predatory moments with Spike because he is evil.
Exactly. And I mean, this is the thing. Like I've heard that the writers would have this thing where they would make Spike remind people that he is evil because people loved him so much and people were so into him. And the thing is that we see that happening, culturally. Like, there's this show on Netflix called You, and I haven't watched it, but I've heard a lot about it, where there's like basically a sociopath at the center of it and everybody's really into him. And the actor who plays him was like, evil. totally
Bad
evil,
guy. Yeah.
terrible human being. Like, do not find this sexy. There's a Ted Bundy thing.
I
people were into Ted
refuse
Bundy.
to watch that because
I know, but I mean, like, and people get really into like the sexy evil guy, the sexy darkness, and I mean, I'm gonna admit, I love me some Spike. When Wesley goes dark over an angel, love that shit, right? You know, so like, I am not gonna lie, like, you know, I think we are all a little bit susceptible to it, but it is really important. I mean, Wesley never was really evil. He went dark, you know, kept a woman in a closet for a while, but you know, whatever.
Fine.
He
gave her
stuff.
a bucket. It was fine.
He gave her a bucket. It was fine. So I don't know, like, it's interesting that we do have to keep reminding ourselves, you know, that he is evil, and don't fall in love with this guy and make him into something that is good, because evil is evil, monster is monster, and you can love him, but you can't forget what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's pretty tough. All right, so girl power moment of the week. What you got?
I got Willow. Willow crying, terrified, but telling Spike what's what. You know, there will be no having of me in any way. It's like, and she's shaking. She's horrified. She's not, you know, she's not powerful in that moment.
Yeah.
And she's still not going to let him, you know, completely overpower her. It's wonderful. And of course, you know how I love a good domestic twist. So Buffy in the kitchen with a wooden spoon about to steak Spike just delights me. Just, you know, anytime
I love the way she's always ready to kill him. You know, she never does.
Yeah.
Because we can't have that, because we need Spike. But yeah, no, I love the way that she's always like, I will kill you in a heartbeat. All right. So Noelle, what's your favorite part?
It's a tie. I can't choose, which is kind of appropriate given the episode that we're in, where everybody is in love with everybody. But you know, hard decisions. It's fine. So I have two. I have two favorite parts. One is Willow's Pezwich emotional roller coaster.
Yes.
So excited that she's interrupting herself.
Right.
Which feels so real to me. It's so delightful to watch. It feels so real and also deeply sad. Foreshadowing when Oz says they don't make a Pez werewolf.
I know.
Pezwich can't have a boyfriend because there's no Pez werewolf. And it's just,
so
my heart. But so that's my like comic tragic favorite part. My straight up comic favorite part is Spike catching fire.
Oh,
I love a hungover, passed out vampire in the sun catching fire and then just deciding that this is all too much. So funny and so perfectly Spike, especially at that point where he cannot catch a break, man. Like
that is a classic. No, but this is Spike. He does what feels good in the moment, getting drunk in Angel's courtyard and spying on him. Yeah. And then when the consequences happen, he deals with it, you know, but I mean, like, he doesn't plan, he doesn't think things through. That's not who he is.
Nope, not at all. What's your favorite part, Lani?
Oh, God, Willow and Spike. Like, I love the relationship between these two. And it's kind of a side relationship. Like, we don't really develop Willow and Spike a whole lot, the two of them, you know? But we do get these moments. And, like, honestly, this one reflected with the one that you mentioned in the initiative, you know, where he's just pathetically falling apart and she's comforting him, you know? And I think that it's really incredibly sweet. But I love her timing. I'm so unhappy.
Yes.
There. You know, and it's so tense and it's so fun. Oh God, I love that whole thing. And basically anything Spike, anything Willow, I love it.
Yep.
All right, that's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow me at Lani9Rich and Noelle at Noelle Aloud and use the hashtag StillPretty.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Lani and all the Chipperish patrons who need a good spot of violence to put everything into perspective.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by Chipperish Media producer Abby, who requested Lover's Walk as the specific episode she wanted to produce, and that shows excellent taste. Abby supports Chipperish Media at the power producer level, and as a reward gets to tie Drusilla up and torture her until she likes her again. Thank you, Abby, and thank you to everyone who supports Chipperish Media and makes all of this possible. Visit patreon.com/chipperish to find out how you, too, can become a Still Pretty producer.
We will be back next time with The Wish, the 9th episode of Season 3. Until then, we may be love's bitch, but at least we're man enough to admit it.